Horror games are often lauded as the most immersive, most terrifying medium for an audience to experience the genre. No longer relegated to an outside observer, we are placed directly in the hair-raising scenarios and given complete control. Our decisions have consequences, and that creaking footstep came from behind us. That monster is chasing after us. But that's not really true, is it? In the end, the player is still protected by another barrier of safety. Those piercing red eyes don't really see you, they see the character in the game. Nothing can follow us out into the real world. The reality is, as long as we've been playing, we've always been safe. But what happens when the game really does see you? When the horror it employs isn't just polygonal monsters, but the game itself is your antagonist. Not the character, you. When it breaks the rules, tricking and sabotaging you, using the mechanics of the game itself to terrorize you. When it lifts the virtual veil of the construct of the video game and reaches out for you. Lost in Vivo is one of my favorite horror games of all time, ever since I first played it in 2019. Created by prolific developer Akuma Kira, the game is more than just a skillful and spooky homage to early survival horror. It's a unique transmutation of the genre, which commits fully to breaking the veil of separation between the game and the player. Something which many horror games will poke at once or twice, that Lost in Vivo makes a regular matter of its game mechanics, terrorizing the player both within and outside the environment of the game. To be clear, what I mean by this distinction is the difference between the game world and the real world. Things like monsters or story moments are things that exist within the world of the game, and is where most horror games employ their scares. Things in the real world might be the menus of the game, on-screen hints and text, and the game's internal files, or even just you sitting in front of your computer controlling the character. Stuff which exists outside of the canon of the game. That barrier between the artifice of the game world and the real world is most often described as something like the fourth wall, and games like Lost in Vivo delight in breaking it. And there are some others in this genre, such as the influential pixel horror I'm Scared or psychological horror dating sim Doki Doki Literature Club, but Lost in Vivo, despite its niche success, has remained relatively under the radar, and I think it occupies a unique position as both a meta horror gem and a fully cohesive traditional survival horror experience. I last discussed this game in a terrible video half a decade ago, which I just could not let be my final word on this project. So today, I'd like to take a much more in-depth look at Lost in Vivo and examine how it marries both its reality-bending meta elements and more traditional horror gameplay and narrative to immersively and comprehensively explore its themes of trauma, mental illness, and overcoming adversity. So, let's get lost. So, how are you feeling? Do you feel these sessions are still helping? You could try something a little more direct. We could start in vivo exposure therapy. And the game begins. We're walking our dog down a neighborhood street at dusk. I'll return in more detail to the seeming therapy session that preludes the gameplay, specifically the term in vivo exposure therapy, but for now, we can only really note that this character seems to be dealing with some as of yet unspecified mental health issues. Not uncommon for a horror game protagonist. As we walk, it begins to rain. Gently at first, but becoming more torrential as we continue on. Along the way, there are these little bits of world building that don't paint a particularly pretty picture. A missing persons poster for Jane Expiravit, last seen February 14th, 2007, and a tabloidy newspaper with the headline, "Secret Government Tests, Dr. B leaks the info, shocking illegal experiments, or man gone insane!" All information that is quickly washed from our mind as the rain floods the streets and washes our dog down an open storm drain. Rushing to a nearby manhole, we descend into the tunnels beneath the road in search of our dog. I have to find her. Now the game really begins. We wander the maze-like network of tunnels in search of our lost pup, navigating by whistling and listening for the direction of her distant barks. Following the sound through the tunnels and into a series of maintenance halls, we get our first bit of protection. A sledgehammer. Well, this does make me feel a little safer. Within these various concrete rooms, we find sleeping bags and rotting meat-filled television sets, as well as notes left by whoever it is that set up shop down here. There's not much on TV nowadays, so I thought I'd make my own show. Some horrid, putrid thing kept coming by to watch, so I would just pretend to be asleep till it passed. But I think it knows I'm awake. I think it's watching me, not the show on the TV. My eyes are useless. All they do now is sting and show me stuff that can't be real. If that rancid thing wants them, then I say, let it have them. I would really prefer not to run into this putrid thing that takes eyeballs, so let's find this dog as fast as possible. Fuck man, I've played this game before, I knew it was coming, and it still scared the shit out of me. The man in the hoodie is missing his eyes, seemingly the author of the notes. I suppose I should feel relieved that he's not a threat anymore, but all I can think about now is whatever it is that took his eyes down here. Our search comes to an end in this hallway, where we find our dog, happy and healthy. I guess that's the end. Oh shit, I guess it couldn't be that easy. As our dog is dragged by some invisible force into a hole too small for us to follow, we are once again separated, wandering deeper into this subterranean labyrinth. The music at this point, and at various points throughout the game, is absolutely heart-pumping. Despite seeing no visual evidence that I'm being chased, the music makes me feel like there's something right on my heels, driving me forward without a moment's rest. The way it fades in and out in volume gives the feeling that something is approaching fast, getting right behind you, then lagging back, only to creep up again moments later. Incredible sound design. Eventually, we find ourselves at an unnerving threshold, an opening just barely wide enough to crawl through, with the words, "All hope abandoned. Ye who enter here." Of course, a reference to the message written above the gates of hell in Dante's Inferno. Also nearby, we find an oar with the name Charon engraved into the wood. This in reference to the ferryman of the river Styx of Greek myth. The message is pretty clear. We're, in for some crazy shit. At the other end of the tunnel, we reach a rusty pit decorated with candles, giving the impression of an almost ritualistic abyss. Dropping inside, we find ourselves in yet another series of tunnels, caked with rust. Throughout, there are cages situated on either side, some empty and some not. Giant bugs, masses of limbs and flesh. Are these the experiments we read about in the tabloid? It's near here we find a damaged but working Ruger Mark II. It can jam at times, but something's better than nothing. Turning a corner, a shape appears from the fog, the silhouette of our dog. But as we approach, is that really you? Suddenly, we're in a peaceful, almost shrine-like room, an angelic statue peering down before an altar. Here, we can save the game. Though it's tempting to stay in a safe place like this, our journey must continue eventually. Leaving the comfort of the save room, the brick drain tunnels lead us up and out into an underground subway station, and it's here we reach the second part of our journey. Ads and artworks adorn the walls of the station, but most noticeable are the wide assortment of bleak weight loss ads. Feels almost dystopian. When we arrive at one of the platforms, the train is just beginning to pull away, and from inside, our dog barks, accompanied by a robed figure with glowing yellow eyes. With the doors firmly shut, we're left with no other option but to watch as our dog slips through our fingers yet again. Who is this thieving pet napper? Oddly, they almost seem to resemble the statue in the save room. I'm sure that's no coincidence. Finding a room where we can access the Metro's computer system, we open it for the next train, hop on, and continue our pursuit. Inside the compartment, someone has left a note behind. February 14th, 2007. I don't want to go. I just want to stay on this train. I want to stay in the dark where no one can see me. February 14th, 2007. Isn't that the last seen date on Jane Experovit's missing poster? I wonder if we'll run into her down here. There's a scream, a crash, and a sound like bones cracking from underneath the train. The cars slow, then come to a stop, powering down. Looks like we'll have to continue on foot from here and see if we can get this train going again. Luckily, we find another station not far down the tracks. It's also here we find our first tape player, which we can use to play something we already have in our inventory, Lost Tape 1. The lost tapes are short playable departures which we can find throughout the game in various places. On the tape, we find ourselves in a rusted metal room filled with dogs and cages and kennels. The sounds of howling and whining animals permeate the air. Our dog is here, locked in one of these cages. Using bolt cutters to break her out, we run for the door before the tape ends. According to the wiki, this is the only tape in the game which is fully canon to the mainline story of the game, though their source for this is no longer available. Exactly what this tape represents isn't entirely clear to me at the moment. Is this where we first found our dog? Is this a warning or nightmare as to where she's headed if we don't rescue her in time? For now, this brief glimpse is all we know. Inside a maintenance office, we find notes left by whoever used to run the station. Apparently, the place is underfunded, falling apart, and the best thing you can do is send any incoming trains right along to the next station. We do get a small bit of advice, seemingly left for their successor in this position. If the power goes out on the tracks, you have to reboot the whole system. In order to do that, go to each section and turn off the breaker boxes. Then come back here and restart the system. I've barely been able to keep the power on, so that's about all the advice besides quitting I can give. So, there's our goal. We have to make our way to each of the 3 breakers around the station, flip them off, and finally reset the master switch back here. Can't be that hard, right? As we make our way forward, we continue to find pages left by Jane Experovit. February 14th, 2007. I want to make a decision. I want control back in my life. I want to matter. Everybody just makes choices for me. Maybe I'll find some place where I can be happy. Someplace dark without people to remind me how ugly I am. I'm sorry. I guess she ran away and passed through here. As a brief side note, I want to point out a subtle but really effective piece of game design in this area. The doors to the various other parts of the station all look pretty similar, and it's easy to get turned around. The platform near the office with the master switch is sort of the main home base you'll be returning to throughout this segment of the game, as this is where our save room is. And you might notice that there's this broken, buzzing escalator right here. The creaking sound it emits makes it really easy to identify which door leads back to the save room and master switch, acting as a diegetic marker to keep you oriented. The game does a good job generally of keeping you oriented in relation to your closest save room, but I think this is one of the more interesting ways it does this. Anyway, now this section isn't explicitly linear, so we'll just follow how my playthrough went, which it's my video. For breaker 1 of 3, after finding a lockpicking set, we have to push through this turnstile, effectively blocking us from turning back. The only way back now is through. There's 2 doors to choose from, but I peek into the one that's unlocked first. Hate that. Let's try the other one. So we picked a lock, and hey, there's the breaker. That was easy. Oh yeah, and each time we reset a breaker, we have to make our way out of that part of the station in the dark. Oh shit, I forgot we can't get out this way. Instead, we are forced to go through the scary door and loop back around through these dark concrete halls. And we are being pursued. A strange, mangled figure hunts us through this place, floating through walls unimpeded. We can briefly slow its advances with our weapons, causing it to transform into a body bag, but this is only temporary, as it will return from the walls soon after. To make a bad situation worse, we run into a series of locked doors which we have to pick at a painstakingly slow pace. Finally making it out the other side, we escape. For now. Oh my god. I legitimately was like shaking in my seat at that last bit. Oh my god. This chase sequence is so simple, but so well designed. The lockpicking set at first seems like a strange choice of item. Mechanically, wouldn't a key work just the same for the door here? But its use is completely transformed once we get into the chase itself, ratcheting up the tension as we are forced to stop dead in our tracks and wait to undo the lock as a monster is breathing down our neck. Then add the fact that it has a chance to fail, slowing you down even further. It works as a perfect additional stressor, along with giving the sequence a bit more mechanical nuance than just run down the hallway. Anyway, let's get back and save. Breaker 2 of 3 is actually fairly simple. Hit the switch and run back. Not much else to it. But we can find some relevant information along the way. Another note from Jane in the bathroom, reading November 15th, 2006, 5 months before she went missing. I don't know what to do. I'm not happy. I'm so ugly, and everyone treats me like I'm not even real. They're so pretty and perfect, and they all have friends, but I'm just here. We also find a baby changing station covered in blood. What happened here? Additionally, there's another note left by the ex-employee. It was a slow day when it happened. Only 2 trains even stopped here, and I didn't see her until it was too late. I heard her sobbing as she walked down the tracks. I wanted to run and save her, but I could hear the train. I just waited and listened. She must have regretted it at the last moment because I heard her scream. I can't stop her. She passes through the walls. All I can do is wait and listen. I don't think it's a stretch to assume that's Jane, and that what we heard on the train arriving here was an echo of what is described in this note. We flip the switch and run back, Jane chasing us all the way, just like before. For the final breaker, we have to make a bit more of a detour. We have to walk down the tracks of another platform, passing through the cabin of another stopped train. It's here that we can pick up a shotgun. Finally, some real firepower. A Riot Police issue shotgun, it only fires rock salt rounds, so I don't think it'll do much damage. Well, damn. That being said, at close range, this is pretty damn effective, and a welcomed addition. Passing through the train, we enter into another maze of utility tunnels. The door to the breaker is locked, but we can gear up on more ammo, snag another lost tape from here, and oh, another set of lockpicks. This whole area is a little confusing to navigate, and it's easy to get turned around, so I make sure to memorize an escape route before flipping the breaker. Just as before, when the lights turn out, Jane begins her pursuit. And on our way out, some of the doors have become locked, so it's back to frantically picking these things. Jane follows us all the way out through the train onto the platform until we finally reach the safety of the station's lounge. Oof. Before we hit the master switch, let's take a look at that lost tape we found. We find ourselves in what looks like a decaying, rusted hospital. Red auras emanate from some of the beds with various distorted, confused, even pleading messages. I am not sick. Why am I here? Something's wrong with them. We come upon more rusty cages, which also contain these auras. Let me out. From here, we enter a large pipe in the wall, then fall into a massive open room with giant, twisted, floating figures everywhere. The tape distorts, then ends. Now again, seemingly after the first tape, the rest are not particularly important to the main story of the game, but they are absolutely worth playing, and they add a lot to the atmosphere of playing the main game. Anyway, let's get that train started and out of here. Flipping the master switch, everything seems fine. Alright then, let's go. Jesus, I guess I should have guessed. Still, I think it's a pretty genius move to change her sound effect here. At this point, you're used to and expecting the music and accompanying sound effects from the previous chase sequences. So hearing this new thing sets off an entirely different part of your lizard brain. Anyway, our train arrives at the station, and it didn't look that rusty before, did it? The doors open directly in front of a pair of shoes that weren't there before, with a yellow ribbon tied to them. A yellow ribbon like this can represent, among other things, suicide awareness. Boarding the train, we find another note left by Jane from the December before she disappeared. He makes me feel so much better sometimes, but I worry that I'm not good enough. He wants me to lose weight, and I'm really trying, but it's so difficult. I look in the mirror, and nothing's changed. Jesus. It's on this train ride, the game gives us a little more of a taste in how it plans to fuck with us from here on out. Hello? What the? And so we arrive at our next stop, Grand Bolim Avenue. Very subtle thematic naming. From here, we really have two obstacles. One door forward is blocked by some kind of puzzle with these eerie rotating heads, and another is covered in some kind of thick slime. Luckily for us, there's a conveniently placed jug of acid just beside it. Let's just haul this thing over to the slime-covered floor and... Well, there's our first game over. Restarting in the spawn room, let's take another look at this puzzle. Oh, the room has now filled with these horrific mirrors which ambush us as we enter and take quite a lot of bullets before they go down. And over by the slime door we find our own body dissolved into a pile of flesh. But it seems that splash of acid from us falling was enough to melt the slime on the door too, so that's nice. This, to me, is the first instance of Lost in Vivo really showing its hand in just how much it's willing to bend the rules and fake you out for its scares and mechanics. This death was inevitable and actually necessary for you to progress, and you literally end up finding your own body. From this point onwards, you have no idea what to expect. Case in point, this next section. Through the slime door, we can hunt down a series of notes which give us the hints needed to solve the rotating heads puzzle. All poems describing different people meeting their ends by their own hand. To get to them, however, we must once again navigate a series of dark train tunnels on foot with trains stopped within them. At least what seem like trains, until...
The way that thing just sped up is crazy. Right at the end. Got my heart going.
And now we can't even trust the inanimate objects anymore. Also in this area we find an old kitchen knife, which can be used as a faster melee alternative to the sledgehammer, with the caveat that it has a lower damage and lower effective range. Still, good to have. There's also another note from Jane. I don't know what to write. I'm not sure if it's good or bad. I don't know if it makes me happy or sad. I think we're going to have a child. Making our way back to the headroom and unlocking the door with the hints we were given, we make our way to what is probably the most iconic puzzle of the entire game, and a culmination to this entire section of the game. But first, we reach another save room, with a note outside.
All he talks about is how ugly I've become, how ugly I'm going to be. He tells me he's leaving. I feel so sick. He hates me now. And I have all this responsibility, all because of this parasite inside me. I didn't think this would happen. I just did what I was told. I wanted him to be happy with me.
Entering the save room, we get the message, save erased? Wait, save erased? What the hell? And I can't even get back inside the save room to reset it. I guess I better hope I can make it to the next one without dying. Shit. And now we're back at the very beginning, with the therapist text. At least, that's what it seems at first. This time, the conversation is different.
So, how are you feeling? Like everyone hates me, and I hate myself? Your sense of self-worth is too influenced by body shape and weight. You don't judge others so harshly. You have worth, you have beauty, but you're unable to see it. Your vision of yourself is distorted. Then how should I fix it? If I can't fix my body, then how do I fix my vision of myself? We're working together to fix it, but I will also write you a refill of your fluoxetine.
Huh. So the game is fucking with us once again. This appears to be Jane's conversation with the therapist, maybe even the very same therapist our character sees. Additionally, Relevant, but not surprising, fluoxetine is prescribed at times as treatment for, you guessed it, bulimia nervosa. Respawning, we are safe and sound right where we left off. This is definitely one of the game's most effective tricks, and I especially love how long it lets you sit in that dread of thinking your progress is gone. Of course, you're on guard at first, knowing it might be trying to pull a fast one on you, but once that text from the beginning of the game comes up, there really is that panic, like, oh shit, is it really going to make me start all the way over? There's also a bit of thematic relevance here, I think, as we kind of shift perspectives from our character to Jane through this save erase. Now, don't get me wrong, we are definitely still the same player character from here on, we haven't changed literally, but through this next puzzle, we'll see how this character almost acts as a surrogate for a part of Jane's story for a brief period. You'll see, let's just move forward. Through the next door, instead of a giant unkillable monster, we find a room with 2 exits. To one side, there's a photo of an eerie, distorted face, and the other a more cartoonish, quote-unquote pretty woman's face. Whenever we pick a door, we go through a hallway that loops us all the way back around to the same room. And if you've made the wrong choice of door, you're attacked by worms as you walk through. As you might have already worked out, the correct answer is through the distorted faces door. Each time we choose this distorted face, it unwinds, becomes more clear until it's Jane, as she really was. In some way, we are working through the very mental struggles Jane experienced herself, comparing herself to an unreal expectation or image and viewing herself in a distorted, just as unreal way. Through our work on this puzzle, we begin to shift that view into one that more closely matches reality. Something which, albeit in a simplified way, seems to be attempting to parallel the therapeutic exercises one might actually go through for a distorted body image. Although I should preface here, I'm not an expert in any of this stuff, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. In any case, we're not out of the woods yet. Down this next hallway, we hit yet another dilemma. A room containing an apple, a toilet, and a door. Just walking straight through the door is wrong, looping us back and again throwing enemies at us. But when we eat the apple on the pedestal, a gate blocks our way out. The only way to retract the bars is by vomiting the apple into the toilet, but that's the wrong answer too. Try as we might, there seems to be no way out. Like there's no escape without either eating or purging our food. The solution to this puzzle requires us to play by the rules the game has been playing by this entire time, which is to say, breaking them. After we eat the apple, we simply have to walk through the bars, as if they were never there at all. This is my favorite puzzle in the game. For one, it allows the player to toy with the bounds of the game the same way the game has been toying with the player this whole time, especially since we arrived at Grand Bullim Avenue. But also because it is so perfectly relevant to the story at hand, a capsule of Jane's struggles with her eating disorder. Now, I'm not an expert in the therapeutic techniques used in treating eating disorders, but with this puzzle, I can't help but feel reminded of exposure response prevention therapy, a technique used in treating, for instance, OCD, and from what I've seen, at times used in treating eating disorders. The idea is to, in a safe environment, expose yourself to things that might trigger your unhealthy responses and help train yourself to sit with those feelings without engaging in the behavior. Now, not to get too personal, but I've gone through therapy like this in the past, and what some people may not realize is even if somebody knows on a logical level that what they're experiencing is one of these unhealthy responses, every part of their brain and body is telling them that this is completely real and urgent, that you literally have to engage in the response or something terrible will happen. And that's why it can be so difficult, but also why this puzzle represents it so well. To the player, there seems literally no other possible option to continue without abstaining from eating or purging the food. What exposure response prevention can feel like is pushing yourself past an impossible obstacle. And it's something you don't just overcome once. You have to do it over and over again to build that muscle which allows you to continue overcoming it, which is again paralleled in the puzzle. Going through the hallway, even after discovering the path forward, it still loops you back over and over before it lets you finally move on. And I should disclaim again, obviously this is not a universal experience and I'm not a therapist, but I think this puzzle was able to portray this specific experience incredibly well, allowing the gameplay mechanics, not just the writing, to engage with the themes of the narrative. Finally coming out on the other side, we enter a room with a bloody baby changing station and a crying fetus. We have 3 choices. We can leave it, take it, or destroy it with one of our weapons. I ended up picking it up, but as far as I can tell, there is no real effect to this choice. Again, I think there's an element here of just trying to place the player in Jane's shoes. In the puzzles leading up to this room, we are given choices, the wrong answers for which will lead us to pain and danger, and often, the right choice is not intuitive. The effect of this leads us to this point thinking, okay, what should I do? Is there a right choice? Things could go bad no matter what I choose. Caught between 3 difficult choices with no guarantee that things work out when you walk through that door. Again, I think a great way of incorporating the player's experience through the gameplay into the narrative itself. Forging ahead, we are once again walking along the subway tracks. Suddenly, a train barrels toward us head on when it's stopped by a ghostly figure. It's Jane. She saved us. Not too far ahead, we can find a final note left from Jane, signed to our exact date on our computer.
I waited in the dark for so long. I lashed out against anyone who got close, but someone kept pushing me into the light. It hurt me for a while. It doesn't hurt anymore.
This seems to tie together all of the previous puzzles that were mirroring Jane's struggles. With our encouragement and help, Jane's spirit was able to release the torment that she was holding onto from life. Just ahead on the tracks, there's a sinkhole leading further underground, a piece of our dog's leash snagged on a bent piece of track. Further below we go. Coming to get you, dog.
I'm currently underneath a labyrinthian network below the streets of the city with the creature. And if I have one message to get out, I don't know how much longer I have, is that you should go support me on patreon.com/SaganHawks. There's all sorts of stuff there. There's exclusive videos, early access, behind the scenes, music. It's all for the low price of $2. And if you just bump it up to $5, then you get to ask questions on the Q&As and on my commentary tracks. But $2, you get all the content anyway. And yeah, there's dozens and dozens of videos at this point over in the archive that are only available on Patreon. So that's my last message to you. So if you just... I think the creature is here. I have to get out of here.
Coming out the other end of these rocky tunnels, we find ourselves in the dark passageways of an abandoned mine. And if I had to guess, this suspiciously ornate door is probably our ticket out of here. To unlock it, we have to find its 3 missing emblems scattered around the mine. Along the way, we'll also find notes from some previous explorer who came across this place before us, like this one.
This place should be empty, but the lights are on and I hear something crawling around. Why keep the power on? Why? I can't fathom what this place even is. I've tried to map it out, but it doesn't make sense.
Maybe this place isn't as abandoned as I'd hoped. Oh look, I can see the light of day on the other end of this caved-in tunnel. There's something a little weird about this. It feels like when you go to see a movie in the middle of an afternoon and come out and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot it was daytime. Our first path to finding an emblem leads us straight down a ladder, deeper underground. I do not like how it sounds down here. But then we hear... our dog. Hey, it's good to see you. You feeling okay? Luckily, this changeling can't follow us up the ladder, but we still don't have much of another choice. Descending the ladder again, we are able to temporarily fend off the creature by unloading a good number of shots into it, causing it to scurry away, but it only buys us a few extra seconds. Still, that's enough to grab the emblem and make our escape. 1 down, 2 to go. The other 2 segments to this area are pretty similar. The second room has us descend even deeper, and along with the emblem, we find another note.
I told everyone, but no one listens to me. I can't trust anyone. They're all just serving the monsters. No one is different, it's just me now. Why wouldn't they listen?
On our way back, though, the game throws us another curveball. Dodging past the creature again, we make it to the safety of the ladder and... climb. I guess this thing does know how to climb, and it is good at it, closing the distance very fast, just up until we make it to the top and it doesn't follow us. This is one of my favorite moments in the game, one of the best subversions of the rules it previously set, pretty explicitly. The thing can't climb, and now it does. Man, what a great... No joke, that moment right there scared me so fucking badly when we're playing the game for this video. Probably the most intense jump scare of my entire playthrough, and it was completely silent. The question now is, who was that strange figure? We'll find out soon enough. Finding the final emblem goes off pretty much without a hitch, though we do come across a final note.
I thought I'd be safe down here. I'm so far away from those monsters above, but even down here, I'm not alone.
We unlock the door and find ourselves in scenery that is entirely different. A sterile, fluorescently lit lab, Nozumi testing. So, I guess that tabloid we saw on the street was right. There's some fucked shit going on down here. The first hint we get as to the experiments that were being performed here comes with our first note from Dr. Brundle.
What kind of a name is Dr. Brundle? Feeling good about today. Progress continues almost at an alarming rate given how theoretical this all should be. Today we had one of the smaller rodents continue to move for almost 2 hours after all of its blood had been drained and replaced with mix PA22.12.5V.
The door to Dr. Brundle's personal office, however, is currently locked, but we can enter a Dr. P's office. Inside, we find refrigerators filled with the bodies of rats and notes that paint an even more eccentric personality.
Shrieks and squeals are all I hear. My dreams are infested with these rats. If only they knew we are going to make them into something beautiful. If they knew that and had the capacity to, they would respect me. But no, it's nothing but screams and wailing. I can't sleep, I can hardly think. Even when I'm further away than the sound should possibly travel, I can still hear them.
Who gave this man a degree? Throughout the lab, more of these notes from Dr. Brundle and begin to tell the story of his seeming descent into madness and the growing rift between the two doctors. Dr. P writes,
"My dreams have found their savior. A dark creature swabbed in dirty robes now lives within them. They eat the rats and silence the screaming. Soon I will begin my work, not this filthy government's rat work, but my true work. I will give birth to my savior so they can silence everything."
And Dr. Brundle's concern grows.
I'm beginning to question my fellow scientists' ethics, if we can truly call any of this science anymore. I fear we're all stumbling into something dark, and with each breakthrough my fear grows. I don't know how they'll react when we inevitably hit a dead end with these experiments. Today I questioned the higher staff just on how far they think we can take these experiments. Dr. P took hold of me and brought me into one of the off-limits rooms and showed me something I don't fully understand. Maybe he was playing an elaborate and inappropriate prank. He told me it was his other pet project and assured me that the work we're doing is of great importance.
And the picture Dr. paints of this pet project is not a pretty one.
I showed Sotiris to Dr. Brundle today. He didn't know what to think. He just stared at it. Maybe he was scared. Sotiris is moving now, but only barely. For some reason, I can't get him to function while the camera is on or while I'm looking at him. But he changes form in between these moments.
In the end, Dr. Brundle seems to reach his breaking point.
We've done it. I have to get out of here as soon as I can. These are creations that should not exist. I don't know if we screwed something up along the way, or if this was the only possible outcome.
As we make our way through the lab, finding these notes, the halls become filled with its leftover experiments, what they turned these caged rats into. Massive, agonized creatures who don't hesitate to overwhelm and attack us. Our only way out is locked behind a retinal scan, meaning one way or another, we're gonna need someone's eyeball, presumably from Dr. Brundle's office. We find our way into Dr. Brundle's office by collecting a lock-picking set and picking the lock. Inside, we find the body of who we might first assume is Dr. Brundle, this being his office after all, but is in fact Dr. P. He's been eaten away by rats and his eyes are missing. Well, shit. Huh? Unity engine debug log, invalid class. Oh no, did I break the game? Hopefully that isn't anything important. On the desk, we find another note from Dr. Brundle.
I can't get out of here. The halls are full of them. They're worshipping this messed up pet. They swarm around just like the rats.
Alright, well, what now? Oh, it looks like I can pick up something from his body. Or I guess just his entire corpse? Shit, I don't know if I was supposed to be able to do that. It seems like we're getting a bunch of error messages. He's right here in my inventory though. Lucky for us, I must have done something right because the room locked behind a retina scanner is now open. Alright then, I'll take it. Inside we find more dark hallways, cages, and... our dog! That's a relief. Now we just have to get out of here. Oh, there's another note from Dr. Brundle.
Dr. went crazy. He attacked me in my office screaming about sacrifice. I hit him over the head and he lost consciousness, but I confirmed he's still alive. I'm going to try to get out of here using the fluid tunnels connected to the rat fluid chamber.
Flood tunnels? Fluid chamber? I'm sure that's not important. Come on, girl. Let's get out of here. Fuck. At least we still have you, Dr. P. Deeper we go. It's here that we enter the final section of the lab, and where we have to part ways with Dr. P. When we try to grab another lockpicking set necessary for proceeding, we're told our inventory is full, and Dr. P's body is dropped to make room. Causing another cascade of error messages. Later, loser. Oh, it looks like we can't actually get through this way. Let's go back. Oh, hey bud. See ya. As you probably guessed from the very start, all those Unity errors were actually part of the whole setup for this scare. This one is a lot of fun, because despite having probably caught on to the game's tricks at this point, it doesn't make that final turn around the corner any less heart-stopping. I even double-checked that the body was still there at one point, because I figured it would pull something like this, and still it scared the hell out of me when it actually happened. I think more than just trying to pull the wool over the player's eyes, this whole bit with Nee's body is meant to keep the player on their toes. It's hard to predict what could possibly happen next when the game is so ready to mess with you in this way, and it's unclear where the whole body in inventory concept is going from the start. It also does a good job of making you question yourself a bit, even for just a second. Like, am I so convinced that the game is always trying to mess with me that I'm just ignoring an actual game-breaking bug? Just more of what this game does best, making you question your own reality and sanity. Following Dr. P's reanimated corpse, we find one final note from Dr. Brundle.
I'm almost out of here, but Pet is in the warehouse by the emergency exit. It won't move while I'm staring at it, but when I try to look away, it seems to reappear somewhere within a closer radius. If someone finds this, please be careful, as the creature may still be around.
And from here, we finally come face to face with Sotiris. A familiar, ghastly figure, the very same thing that appeared in the mines earlier. Essentially, Sotiris works a bit like a Stone Angel or Slender Man or SCP-173. You get it. If you're looking at it, it can't move. If you're not, it can. It does have some extra quirks, like being able to suddenly appear in front of you while you're running, meaning you've got to have some quick reaction time to avoid barreling straight into it. Our goal here is to once again find an eyeball for a retina scanner within a massive cold storage warehouse, the boxes blocking our sightline and turning the whole place into a maze. One cool detail here is that when you're killed by Sotiris, our regular death screen is now replaced with an empty eye socket. Because, yeah, Sotiris' whole thing is stealing eyeballs, basically. He's almost certainly the same guy that took the hoodie guy's eyes, too. Locating the missing eye in a pile of meat, we rush through the door and find our way to a rusted elevator. Ooh, let's go. What? Wait, but what about our dog? I guess we got the bad ending or something? Oh fuck. As the game yet again pulls a fast one on us, we descend back into the ground, deeper now than we've ever been. What new horrors await us in the penultimate act of our journey? Deeper than ever before in this labyrinth of rusty halls and concrete tunnels, the next room we stumble upon is really out of place. It feels calm, homey. It almost seems like a therapist's office. This doesn't seem to make any sense, and maybe that's to be expected. The map for this area seems to be imposed over an X-ray of a skull, our mind. Of course, the game up to this point, following in the footsteps of its survival horror predecessors, has largely been paralleling a kind of inner journey, but now we're more explicit than ever. Who knows how much of this, if any, has been real? A note nailed to the door that would take us forward seems familiar.
If the power goes out on the tracks, you have to reboot the whole system. In order to do that, go to each section and turn off the breaker boxes. Then come back here and restart the system. I've barely been able to keep the power on, so that's about all the advice besides quitting I can give.
So we are left with a similar task. Activate 3 switches across the map, then come back here to progress. In this case though, the switches are a little different. Entering the first of the 3 chambers, we cross this sagging bridge over a conveniently broken electric switch and pool of water. I'm sure those won't come back later. Just past here, we are introduced to our first switch.
What are you hoping to accomplish? Without me, you're just hollow. You're pathetic. You need fear to motivate you.
Very PT. Alright, little fella, enough of your snarky comments. That was easy. It's that figure that took our dog on the train, and it has just unleashed something massive. This is the Siren, and will be the main antagonist for this section of the game. Running across the bridge and flipping the switch just in time, we're able to injure it for long enough to escape, but it's still crawling around down here. In the next chamber, we find the mean-talking piece of brain fairly quickly.
Do you think you're getting better? Does doing this even have a purpose?
Along with a blocked door and a page, Scary Stories for Kids Volume 2. There's actually a page of these stories in each one of the chambers, which provide a hint as to how we're supposed to defeat the Siren in each one, but the rest I think are obvious enough without needing the hint that I don't need to go over the others.
Once there lived a man with his nice old dog. One night the nice man was walking his dog, as was his nightly habit, but then the dog got out of his leash to quickly chase after a rabbit. The night sky was dark, just barely lit, so the nice man was filled with worry. But then the old dog yelped and ran inside, as if it was in a hurry. The nice man went inside and locked up, his worries for now put to bed. But then, out of the window, he saw his old dog, but its skin had been shed.
Been there, brother. Once we destroy the brain, we're taken to the storm drains. And things control a little bit differently now, too. We've taken the POV of our dog, replicating the sections of the game where we've whistled before, now the other way around, barking to follow the whistled response of our owner. Finally, we find ourselves on the other end of that blocked door, when something that looks like a hand comes into view, and we're taken back to the main character's POV. And now something, presumably our dog, is banging on the door. We're only given one choice. Do we flood the room beyond, or not? Now, the obvious solution is to take the hint at face value. That is not our dog, it's a trick, and we should flood the room to flush it out. But there is a little bit more of a mind game going on, I think, because the game has faked us out so many times at this point that we're unsure if we should actually listen to the obvious answer. Is it trying to trick us into drowning our dog? But this time, that actually is the right way to go about it, because the Siren will bust down that door if we don't flood the room in time. The final chamber works pretty much exactly the same as the first. Find the talking brain.
I'm your identity. I'm your crutch. You used to cling to me like a parasite. I know you better than anyone, and I know you're weak. You'll come right back.
And then give the Siren the runaround to ambush it. This time though, it takes more than one go. We have to lead the Siren under a large hydraulic door, trapping it underneath and taking shots at it until it's able to break out, and then lead it around again. It's definitely tense, in part thanks to the sound design and massive size of the Siren trailing behind you, but fairly straightforward nonetheless. Once we've dealt enough damage, the Siren is crushed under the weight of the door and something bursts out of its head. Gross. And we've done it. Making our way back, the therapist's office has been replaced with a hallway that leads to a dark, rusted pit. Let's dive deeper one final time. In this final section of the game, we navigate through the most thoroughly rusted and decayed tunnels yet. Through yet another crawling section, we are ambushed by giant roaches until we come out the other end and are given our final save room. Let's go. Forging through these decrepit halls, we are faced with an entirely new enemy type, these floating corpses, whose sound design is absolutely horrific. The hallways deteriorate from metal and concrete to rock and earth. In one room, there are these writhing vines of meat, and in another, a series of open graves. There's a note here, and when you try to read it, it tells us that the text is illegible, but that's not actually true. If we crouch down to get a look at it, we can read the text straight from the object itself.
It lay upon my branches, dangling there as a sick reminder of what I rejected. The smug, dead face stares at me, almost grinning it seems, like it's happy to be without me inhabiting it.
In one final room, I find a tree with an outstretched branch. It wants something, but I don't think I have it. So we move ahead, until we round the corner to a hall with a shining light at the end, and we're back in the storm tunnels. The light from the outside bounces off the stone walls. Climbing the ladder to the surface, we are met with our dog, reunited in safety. We have finally reached the actual end. You escape from the confines of the sewer and reunite with your dog. You feel as though your experience has changed who you are, and that the barriers that once restricted and intimidated you have now fallen away. You've been to hell and back, confronted your fears, and gotten stronger. So, that was quite the journey, and in a broad sense, the general narrative is fairly easy to follow. After our dog is swept down a storm drain, we traverse the labyrinthian network beneath the streets, deeper and deeper, from subway stations to abandoned mines to secret laboratories in search of our lost pup. Throughout our voyage, we run into the remnants of the tragedies and traumas which took place around us, and in the end, must overcome our own internal struggles to make it out the other side and be reunited with our dog. Aside from just the literal events of the story, though, there are a lot of recurring themes which we see over and over: claustrophobia, overcoming mental health struggles, and a distorted sense of reality and the self, with this distorted reality angle reinforced by the constant fake-outs, tricks, and meta moments. But we'll get back to that. Clearly, there's a lot to discuss in this game, and there's a lot I didn't even show you. Firstly, there's a sort of character model gallery you can access in a way I don't want to spoil, but it does give some interesting insight, like the fact that the save room statue and creepy figure from the train are in fact the same character, Virgil. Given the previous references to Dante's Inferno, it seems safe to assume this character is a reference to Dante's guide through hell in that story, which I think helps explain the nature of its appearances. It's not necessarily a malevolent force kidnapping our dog, it's just giving us the extra push we need to go deeper, to confront and ultimately overcome the struggles which await us at the end, while also helping us rest and recover when we need to. I also briefly covered a couple of the lost tapes, but all in all there are 6, which grow longer and become almost entirely new short game experiences in and of themselves. But since they're not canon to the main story of the game, I didn't want to go over them all. Then there's the secret modes like Midnight Mode, which is an arcadey dark fantasy speedrunning game. Then there's Dark Mode, which is basically a 20-minute horror music video visualizer driving sim. And then there's the alternate endings, New Game Plus, and scares in moments that I intentionally left out of my overview here. Some of the reasons I've left this stuff out is for brevity and focus's sake, but also because I think this is a game that's really worth your time playing even after having watched this, and I want there to be stuff for you to discover when you play it for yourself. Not only is there a ton of cool extra stuff to discover, there's also quite a few moments in the main game that may surprise you even after having seen this whole video. Take this as my official plea to support and play the game for yourself. With that said, I do still have quite a bit to talk about in relation to the story, themes, and more meta elements. Now, the stories behind the various characters and environments we run into are fairly self-explanatory on their own. Scientific experiments gone awry, tormented spirits, monsters in the mines. But in a thematic sense, taking the literal events of the story as entirely real might miss the more overarching narrative. An internal journey through mental turmoil and conflict. This becomes most obvious at the end, where we're confronted with our own brain's most negative thoughts and must conquer them, in the arena within our very mind. And this is where we come back to the title, Lost in Vivo, and that term I mentioned before, In Vivo exposure therapy. Now, I already mentioned exposure therapy earlier in the video, but there are a few different kinds. The exposure can be anything from simulating a situation one might struggle with to even just imagining one. But in vivo exposure therapy means you actually physically confront it in real life. If you're afraid of heights, you go somewhere high. If you're scared of spiders, you get into a room with a spider. So the title Lost in Vivo actually makes the narrative pretty clear. After opening on a therapy session which plainly states our next step is in vivo exposure therapy, we are taken on a journey where we confront our fears directly. We're literally lost within our own therapeutic treatment in a sort of parabolic way, and after facing our fears head on, we come out the other end stronger. You feel that your experience has changed who you are, and that the barriers that once restricted and intimidated you have now fallen away. The supernatural and impossible events we experience are a part of this larger symbolic narrative, in my mind. That's not to say that there's nothing to be found within the literal events and lore of the game. There clearly is. But I think this internal story about facing your fears and overcoming mental struggles is what the game on the whole is about. And this idea of confronting your issues in order to progress is built right into the gameplay. From the design of each level, which for the most part forces the player to enter into claustrophobic or knowingly dangerous environments to progress, to the explicit parallels to therapeutic techniques like the apple puzzle. That puzzle in particular, I think, is a perfect intersection of the game's use of story, themes, and gameplay to tackle the same concept or motif. From a storytelling perspective, it relays a part of Jane's story in a visceral and impactful way, and sets up for the payoff of Jane's journey afterwards. In gameplay, it is the exact type of mind-bending, rule-breaking puzzle that this game loves to use to mess with the player, to create a sense of the unexpected throughout the rest of the game. And from a thematic view, it is a perfect illustration of the game's main through-line, of direct confrontation with seemingly impossible obstacles to overcome them. Jane's story in general, and the way the player is able to help her soul pass on via these puzzles, greatly parallels our own character's full journey throughout the game. I think there's even an element of our character learning from how we helped Jane about how to overcome our own mental obstacles by the end. And together, all of these elements help support each other, strengthening the overall experience. But aside from a writing perspective, the game's visuals tell this story too. Lost in Vivo's aesthetics and visuals, aside from their grungy, uncanny quality which help build the atmosphere and feel of the game, are overflowing with visual symbolism and storytelling, following greatly in the footsteps of games like Silent Hill. One of my favorites is the mirror enemy designs. They're so jarring at first because it's not entirely clear that they're enemies, just these floating inanimate objects. Reflected inside is this hellscape of distorted faces, and it mirrors, pun intended, so well that through line of the distorted self-image, and generally reinforces the themes of unhealthy or unreal views of reality. There's also the obvious stuff, like the map at the end being an x-ray of a skull and Jane's ghost having a smaller set of arms coming out of the stomach. But through all of its designs, there's this sense of a distortion of form, which works really well. The contorted quadrupedal humanoid figures of the Ratmen, or the tormented experiments caged in the storm drains. A side note, the Ratmen are actually a direct reference to this painting by Zdzisław Beksiński, whose style has been described as fantastic realism, which feels sort of apt to the themes that we're talking about. Visions of a familiar reality misshapen into an uncanny reflection, executed most directly with Jane's photo puzzle. But even through all the visuals and storytelling, to me the most interesting and direct way the game relays its themes is through its use of meta and game-breaking moments. I introduced the game at the start of this video as one which pulls at the player directly, that reaches through the veil of the fiction and grabs the viewer in their own reality. And I really do think that's the case, and is the thing that makes Lost in Vivo so engaging. So let me point out one more time. My opinion is that the core underlying theme of Lost in Vivo is overcoming fears and obstacles that seem insurmountable by facing them headfirst and directly. Even when these fears are irrational, or the obstacles are mentally imposed, to our personal experience of reality, they feel just as real as a dangerous animal or incoming tornado or a monster in the hall. The game explores these issues via our experience of them as a kind of distorted reality. Jane's vision of herself, our character's feelings of worthlessness or reliance on our depression and anxieties. These distortions for the characters within the game can take the form of monsters and physical obstructions. But the game doesn't just distort reality for the characters within the game. The game subjects us, the player, to the very same distortions, the very same seeming impossibilities which we are nevertheless forced to confront and overcome. For the player, these unreal moments come in the form of bending or breaking the rules and barriers of the game itself, coming out of the fiction of the characters' worlds, the game world, and into ours, where we are in real life playing the video game. It happens in more subtle ways, creating expectations of the rules and then subverting them, like the train monsters. Preying on our previous experience of the trains in the tunnels as being static objects suddenly coming to life. Or the dog mimic, which previously seemed incapable of climbing ladders, suddenly scrambling up behind you. But it also does this in more overt ways, which explicitly tap on or even bust through the fourth wall like the Kool-Aid Man. Pretending to erase your save and leading you all the way through the dread of believing the game has started from the beginning, requiring you to die and reset in order to progress only to be met with your own dissolved corpse, falsely ending the game, credits and all, only to wrench us all the way back down into the bowels of the maze, adding error messages and strange pickups so that we question the very integrity of our game's files, only to reveal that it's been a setup the whole time. And of course, the iconic puzzle we keep coming back to, requiring you to literally break all logic and assumed rules of how a video game even works, and no-clip through a seemingly solid object. In doing all of this, Lost in Vivo creates a true sense of the unknown, an experience in which the only thing the player can expect is the unexpected, where we cannot even trust the basic core tenets of the bounds of a video game. In a horror sense, this geniusly creates a dynamic where the player isn't just afraid for the character's life, but what possible consequences could lie for the player in real life. When can you trust if something is a real glitch or not? Will your progress all be erased? What is the game even capable of doing? How far out is it willing to stretch to reach you? But perhaps more ingeniously, by distorting the actual reality of the player themselves, it creates a level of immersion to the experience of the characters and the themes that would otherwise be impossible if the game were to play traditionally. Whether it's Jane's distorted view of herself or our characters' inner voices creating an unhealthy mental view of themselves, by distorting the reality of playing a video game for the player, it places us into, in some small way, the same shoes as those in-game characters. Unsure of what to trust about what they see, only receiving a contorted and hostile view of the world around them. And in just the same way, they need to push past what seem from their perspective to be real and impossible boundaries, we too have to push past all of the instances when the game seems to tell us there is no way forward, things are too broken, you are too weak, there is no escape, and still persevere forward, confronting each one and overcoming it until we emerge on the other side, stronger. And I see no more fitting a way to tell a story which thematically and symbolically seems to be mixing literal events and parable, real stories of tragedy and metaphors for the internal, with no clear delineation between what is real and symbolic, than by bending the bounds of the medium itself, the rules of reality for the player, with just as much carefree abandon. So, in short, I think Lost in Vivo utilizes these meta tricks and fourth wall moments to more thoroughly explore its core themes, overcoming your fears and mental health struggles. By leading the player to perform or experience the seemingly impossible in order to progress, it can mirror how the characters within the story of the game conquer their own hardships to create a completely immersive experience of its subject matter for the player. Lost in Vivo reaches out of the game in order to pull us further in. Thank you all for watching. Sorry for the wait on this one, I was in the middle of moving. That's also why it's kind of a plain background this time. Haven't been able to unpack everything yet. Hopefully the next one won't be so long a wait. Thank you to my patrons for supporting these videos. If you'd like to take a look at what I have to offer over on the Patreon, you can head over to patreon.com/SaganHawks. For the music, I actually used a bunch of songs I've already released over the years, so a list of those songs should be in the description, and you should be able to stream them on everything, Spotify, YouTube, basically everywhere. Big shout out to Kira for making such awesome games, and I once again implore you to try Lost in Vivo for yourself. I left a decent amount on the cutting room floor, and I think you'll still have a pretty great experience even after having seen this whole video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Okay.